At the mating ritual, one accidental touch from the Omega stopped the Alpha King and silenced the pack. Hello everyone. Before we begin today's story, I have a small favor to ask. Please hit subscribe and turn on the notification bell so you never miss our channel's new videos. It's quick, free, and the best way to support us in bringing you more dramatic stories. Your support means the world to us. Where are you watching from? Drop your city or country in the comments below. Thank you very much. Now, let's return to Lila Rowan. The night air shimmered with torchlight as the Silver Fawn court gathered beneath the full moon, every breath in the great stone hall thick with anticipation. The scent of pine, cold wind, and polished steel filled the space as wolves from every pack pressed forward, eager to witness the moment the Alpha King would choose his mate. Lila moved silently along the outer edge of the crowd, clutching a tray of spare ribbons and cloth meant for the higher-ranked attendants. Her stepmother's warning echoed in her mind. Keep your head down. Do not draw attention. Omegas like you are seen, not spoken to. Lila obeyed, trying to make herself smaller as she crossed the marble floor. Her heartbeat thudded in her ears, matching the low drumbeats that opened every mating ritual. Ahead, the ceremonial path glowed with silver dust. It was meant for confident she-wolves with strong wolves and proud families, not for someone like her. But the universe had a strange sense of timing. A sudden gust swept through the hall, rushing down from the balcony arches. It lifted one of the linen covers from a banquet table. The fabric fluttered like a startled bird and spiraled directly toward the Alpha King's approaching entourage. Instinct kicked in. Lila darted forward, reaching to catch the wayward cloth before it tangled with the royal procession. She wasn't meant to step even a foot into the ceremonial lane, but she couldn't let the ritual be disrupted. Not because of her. She grabbed the cloth, but her momentum carried her another step forward, right as the Alpha King himself, Damien Hale, came within arm's reach. Lila stumbled, her free hand shooting out to steady herself. Her fingers brushed his. Just a touch. A mistake. And the world stopped. The drums halted mid-beat. Conversations died instantly. Even the wind seemed to collapse into silence. Damien froze as if rooted to the marble beneath him, his silver eyes widening a fraction as his gaze snapped to her. Lila's breath caught, her heart pounding hard enough to sting. She tried to pull back, but something in his expression, shock, recognition, something deeper, held her in place without a word. The court watched in stunned silence. No Omega, especially one hidden in the servant's shadow, had ever touched an Alpha King. But Damien didn't step away. He didn't reprimand her. He didn't even blink. He simply stared, as though the accidental brush of her fingers had struck him harder than any blow could. And in that breathless pause, the entire hall knew something had shifted, something they were not prepared for. For a long moment Lila could not breathe, standing with the linen still clutched in her hand, while every pair of eyes in the Silver Fawn court fixed on her. The marble beneath her feet felt too smooth, too bright, as if the entire hall leaned in to witness what would happen next. Damien Hale did not move. His gaze was steady, almost unreadable, but there was something softened beneath the silver, a quiet flicker she had never seen in a ruler so feared and respected. Lila lowered her hand quickly, stepping back until her heel almost touched the ceremonial boundary line. She wished she could disappear into the shadows where she had been only moments before. The murmurs began first as whispers, gentle enough that she thought she imagined them, then louder, rolling through the hall like ripples on a pond. An Omega touched him. Did he freeze? Why did he freeze? He should have walked past her. Lila felt her cheeks warm. She stared at the floor, trying to steady her breaths. The Alpha King finally blinked, a subtle shift, and the sound of his exhale carried farther than it should have in such a crowded space. He took a slow step toward her, not with the heavy authority he was known for, but with a calm that made the crowd fall silent again. A royal advisor hurried forward with an anxious bow, his voice hushed yet strained. Your Majesty, the ritual participants are waiting. Perhaps we should proceed. Damien did not take his eyes off Lila. In a moment, the words created another wave of startled reactions. Nobody delayed the mating ritual. Nobody paused the ceremony for an Omega servant. Damien's attention remained steady, almost thoughtful, as if he was trying to understand what had just passed between them. Lila felt the weight of his focus and straightened instinctively, the way her grandmother once taught her. Shoulders gentle, chin level, heart steady. She found her voice, soft but respectful. "Your Majesty, I apologize. I did not mean to step into your path." Her words floated upward, nearly lost in the vast hall. Damien studied her, as if the apology did not fit what he had felt. His expression did not harden. Instead, he asked, very quietly, "Are you hurt?" Lila blinked, surprised enough to look up. His question was simple, but unexpected. Kindness was rare at these ceremonies, especially toward someone like her. "I am fine," she answered. "I only wish to keep the cloth from causing a distraction." A faint shift touched the corners of his eyes, not quite a smile, but something gentler than anything she had expected. The advisor cleared his throat again, more urgently. "Your Majesty, the council is waiting. The selection requires your presence." Damien seemed to hear him only distantly. He stepped back at last, allowing the traditional path to open once more, but the air between him and Lila hummed with an awareness neither understood. As he turned toward the ceremonial platform, several highborn she-wolves straightened, adjusting their gowns, preparing for the moment they had practiced since childhood. But Damien paused before taking his place, his voice carrying clearly across the hall. "No one is to approach her." Gasps echoed. The decree was not harsh, simply firm, a boundary drawn without explanation. Lila's breath caught again. She wrapped her fingers around the folded cloth, grounding herself as the Alpha King walked toward the moonlit dais. Yet even as he stood before the assembly, his posture regal and composed, Lila sensed his attention drifting back to her, as if the accidental touch still lingered like a quiet echo neither of them could ignore. The torches along the marble walls flickered as if sensing the shift in the air, their light bending softly toward the Alpha King as he stepped onto the moonlit platform. The Silverfang court watched in reverent silence, waiting for him to begin the ritual, but Damien Hale did not immediately address the crowd. His gaze drifted once more toward the far edge of the hall, where Lila stood frozen with the cloth in her hands, unsure if she should remain or attempt to retreat into the shadows. She felt the attention of the pack prick at her skin like static. Every instinct urged her to disappear, to slip away so quietly that nobody would remember the Omega who had accidentally stepped into a king's path. But a quiet, steadying thought anchored her. If she moved too quickly, it might draw even more attention. So she stayed where she was, breathing slowly, hoping her heartbeat would settle. Damien looked away at last, turning to face the assembly. His voice, deep and controlled, filled the hall with a calm authority that carried across every stone. "We gather tonight under the full moon to honor our traditions," he began. "The bond we seek is not one of convenience, but one of truth." His words were formal, yet something in them felt distant, as though part of his mind remained anchored to the moment that had just occurred. A group of highborn she-wolves stepped forward gracefully, each hoping to be chosen. Their ceremonial gowns shimmered under the moonlight, and their expressions were flawlessly poised. Lila could not help but admire them. They moved with certainty, with pride, with the comfort of belonging. She had never imagined herself anywhere near that kind of spotlight. She shifted her weight carefully, trying not to draw sound or movement. Her fingers tightened on the cloth, and she slowly tucked it at her side, grateful for something to hold on to. Damien's advisor leaned in again, whispering guidance, but the king lifted a hand gently to pause him. That single gesture made the entire court inhale quietly. Damien surveyed the candidates before him, but there was no spark of recognition in his eyes, no pull or instinct responding to their presence. Instead, after a long pause, he asked a question that made the room stir. "Is this everyone?" The advisor nodded slowly. "Yes, Your Majesty. All eligible candidates from the Northern and Central Territories have been presented." Damien's jaw tightened, though not with frustration, more like contemplation. His gaze swept across the hall once more, searching. Lila ducked her head, but the quiet awareness she felt earlier returned, as though some invisible thread connected them despite the distance. She could not explain it, only sense it. A gentle warmth near her collarbone pulsed softly, like a heartbeat that was not her own. The gathered wolves shifted restlessly, their curiosity growing. One of the highborn candidates attempted a graceful step forward, her posture confident. "Your Majesty," she said in a hopeful tone, "the moon shines brightly tonight. Perhaps it guides you already." Damien regarded her with polite respect, but his expression remained unchanged. "The moon guides," he agreed, "but it does not rush." His words were calm, yet firm enough to quiet further advances. Lila felt her breath hitch when his eyes flicked toward her again, as if drawn without intention. She quickly looked down, praying nobody else noticed, though she sensed some did. The ritual music resumed softly in the background, signaling the next phase of the ceremony, but Damien did not step into place for the final selection. Instead, he spoke once more, voice steady. "Before I choose, I will take a moment." He descended from the platform, not rushed, not hesitant, but with purpose, leaving the entire court waiting in stunned silence as he stepped away from tradition and into something the moon itself seemed to whisper toward. Damien's footsteps echoed softly across the marble floor, each one measured and unhurried, carrying a weight that drew every eye in the silver fawn court. The ritual music faltered as musicians hesitated, watching the Alpha King descend the moonlit platform in a move no tradition had ever scripted. Lila stood absolutely still, unsure if she should bow, step aside, or simply find a way to vanish before the entire hall realized he was walking toward her. Her heart fluttered rapidly against her ribs, each beat a quiet reminder that she was far too visible tonight. She clasped the folded cloth tighter, grounding herself in the simple texture. Her breath steadied only slightly as Damien stopped several steps away, close enough that she could see the faint shimmer of moonlight caught in his dark hair, yet far enough to show he respected the space between them. He spoke gently, his voice carrying in the hushed hall. "You stepped forward because you meant to help, correct?" Lila's throat tightened. She nodded once. "Yes, Your Majesty. I did not want anything to interfere with the ceremony." A subtle shift warmed his expression, not quite a smile, but something softer than the composed mask he wore before his court. "Your intention was noted." The crowd stirred. The highborn candidates exchanged surprised glances, their poised confidence bending under a growing uncertainty. Lila lowered her gaze instinctively. She was an Omega, a servant. Her presence was not meant to influence a ritual of this magnitude. "I can return to my duties, Your Majesty," she said softly. "I did not mean to interrupt anything." Damien studied her for a moment that lingered longer than tradition allowed. "You did not interrupt," he replied. "Something occurred, and I needed a moment to understand it." The court held its breath. The ceremonial officer stepped forward cautiously, addressing the king with controlled composure. "Your Majesty, the ritual requires you to begin the final selection. The moonrise window is limited." Damien did not turn away from Lila immediately. His voice remained calm. "I am aware." Only when he looked toward the platform again did the officer retreat, though his uncertainty remained visible. The Alpha King faced the candidates once more, but the room sensed that the center of his attention had shifted, aware of something he himself had not expected. Lila felt a warmth near her collarbone again, subtle yet present, as if an unseen thread had tightened gently. She inhaled carefully, trying to steady the unfamiliar sensation. Damien raised his hand to address the hall. "The ritual will proceed," he announced, "but I will choose with clarity, not haste." His gaze swept the room with unmistakable resolve. A bond cannot be forced by expectation. The candidates stiffened slightly, their confidence wavering. Lila felt a sudden urge to slip away, not out of fear, but out of the instinctive need to let the world return to its intended order. She took a small step backward. Damien's attention flicked to her again, brief but unmistakably aware. "Remain where you are," he said softly, yet firmly enough that the nearest guard stiffened. Not a command meant to confine her, but one meant to shield her. Unseen had already begun to change. The silver glow of the full moon deepened as the ritual resumed, casting a soft sheen across the polished marble floor and illuminating the carved runes beneath Damien's feet. The ceremonial music drifted back to life, gentle and steady, yet every note held a quiet tension, as if even the instruments sensed the unexpected shift in the air. Lila remained near the edge of the hall, exactly where the Alpha King had instructed, though she could feel dozens of glances brushing against her like passing currents. She kept her hands carefully folded in front of her, her posture small and respectful, hoping to draw as little attention as possible. But the warmth pulsing subtly beneath her collarbone refused to fade, reminding her of the strange moment that had changed the rhythm of the night. On the platform, Damien lifted a ceremonial crystal, its surface catching the moonlight and scattering it in fine beams across the hall. The candidates adjusted their stances, prepared to be evaluated. Their gowns shimmered, their expressions composed. Everything looked exactly as tradition dictated, yet the atmosphere did not feel the same. Damien's voice flowed through the hall, calm and certain. Each bond is shaped by instinct, truth, and the quiet understanding that forms without reason. Those listening nodded politely, though some exchanged uncertain glances. These words were not commonly spoken during the selection, and they hinted at something the court did not yet grasp. Lila shifted gently, holding the cloth at her side, trying to look anywhere but at the king. Attention again. She did not want to disrupt something sacred. The ceremonial officer cleared his throat softly. Your Majesty, if you wish to make the final selection, the moon stands at its highest point. The king acknowledged him with a gentle nod. I am aware. But instead of finishing the ritual, Damien spoke with calm clarity. The bond one seek is honest, steady, and unforced. The crowd went utterly still. Highborn candidates exchanged glances tinted with apprehension. Lila felt her heart pick up a nervous rhythm. Damien continued. Before I choose, I require one more moment. With that, he stepped down from the dais again. Not hurried, not uncertain, simply purposeful. The hall watched in stunned silence as he walked toward the far edge of the room, toward the shadows where Lila stood. Her breath held tight in her chest. She felt as if the entire hall leaned closer with her, waiting to see what the Alpha King, who never deviated from tradition, intended to do next. Damien stopped only a few feet from her, not imposing, but steady and composed. His voice lowered, gentle yet clear enough for the hall to hear. Lila Rowan, he said, as if her name carried a significance he was only beginning to understand. I would ask something of you, if you are willing. The court fell into a deeper silence, suspended between breath and destiny, as the moon cast its light on the two of them once more. The hall remained so quiet that Lila could hear the faint rustle of her own breath as Damien spoke her name, gentle yet steady, as if he wanted to make sure she knew he meant no pressure. Her fingers curled softly around the folded cloth at her side, grounding her as she lifted her eyes just enough to meet his. If you are willing, Damien continued, I would ask you to step forward. His tone held no command, only an invitation that surprised everyone listening. Lila hesitated, not out of fear, but out of the awareness that every soul in the Silverfawn court was watching her now. She swallowed softly. Your Majesty, I am only an Omega, she said quietly. I do not know if I should be part of this moment. Damien's expression softened, the smallest shift, yet enough to warm the tension around them. Sometimes, he replied, the moon chooses differently than tradition expects. The words lingered in the air like a soft current, brushing against expectation and reshaping it. Lila inhaled slowly, then took a single step forward. It was not bold, nor dramatic, just steady, respectful, and honest. The court watched as the distance between them closed to only a few feet. Damien nodded once, grateful, and spoke gently. Earlier, when you steadied yourself, something happened. I felt a reaction I did not recognize. I would like to understand if it was momentary, or if it remains. Lila's pulse fluttered at the memory. That warm, quiet spark beneath her collarbone pulsed again in agreement. I felt something too, she admitted, her voice barely above a whisper. The honesty surprised even her. Damien extended his hand slightly, palm open, leaving the choice entirely to her. May I, he asked. No pressure, no expectation, just a question spoken with genuine respect. Lila stared at his hand, her breath catching gently. She had never touched an Alpha King intentionally. She had never expected to. Slowly, she lifted her hand, hovering just above his, waiting for the moment her instincts demanded honesty. When her fingers finally brushed his palm, the reaction unfolded quietly, without any dramatic flair. A subtle warmth spread from the point of contact, gentle and reassuring, like the comfort of sunlight on cool skin. Damien inhaled softly, a breath he did not seem to expect. The same calm warmth radiated through him, settling his usually disciplined composure. It was not overpowering. It was not dramatic. It was simply right. The court did not understand what they were witnessing, but they felt the shift as surely as the wind that moved through the high windows. Damien's voice dropped, not low enough to hide, but quiet enough to carry sincerity. This is not something I have felt before. Lila nodded once, her voice soft. Neither have I. The sincerity between them drew the hall even deeper into stillness. The ceremonial officer stepped forward shakily, unsure how to interpret what was unfolding. Your Majesty, the moon waits for your selection. Damien did not look away from Lila. His voice remained calm. I know. For a moment, the world seemed to hold its breath. Lila stepped back gently, giving him the space tradition required, even if everything inside her felt strangely anchored to the moment they shared. Damien turned toward the platform again, but his expression held a new clarity, as if something in him had aligned. Before returning to the ritual, he spoke softly enough for only those closest to hear, yet firmly enough to settle in the air. Whatever this is, he murmured, it is not finished. And as he walked away, the warmth beneath Lila's collarbone pulsed once more, quietly echoing the truth neither of them could ignore. The moon hung higher now, its pale glow spilling across the marble floor as Damien returned to the ceremonial platform. Yet something invisible lingered in the space between him and Lila, a quiet thread tethering their awareness even as several yards of polished stone stretched between them. The gathered pack members sensed the shift, though none dared voice their confusion. The ritual should have been clear, predictable, and steeped in tradition. But tonight, nothing felt predictable at all. Lila remained where she stood, her breath soft and steady as she tried to calm the gentle flurry in her chest. The warmth beneath her collarbone still pulsed, faint but undeniable, as if responding to something it recognized long before her mind could understand it. She kept her gaze lowered, but every instinct whispered that Damien's attention still brushed against her, even before she dared look up. On the platform, Damien lifted the ceremonial crystal a second time. Its surface caught the moonlight, scattering delicate patterns across his hands and face. His posture was composed, but not distant. The earlier moment between them had settled into his expression, subtle yet unmistakably present. The ceremonial officer stepped forward again, bowing with respectful caution. Your Majesty, the moon is approaching the final arc. The selection must be made soon, or the ritual will need to be postponed. Damien inclined his head slightly, acknowledging the reminder without irritation. I am aware, he replied, his voice even. The candidates stood poised, each shimmering in finely tailored gowns, each fully prepared for their names to be spoken. Yet the king's gaze moved past them with quiet introspection, as if he was listening for something deeper than expectation. Lila felt another ripple beneath her skin, a sensation like the soft drawing of breath shared across a great distance. She clasped her hands together, silently imploring her heart to steady itself. Damien lowered the crystal, letting his fingers rest against its surface. Then he spoke once more. Tradition shapes us, he said, his tone calm and reflective, but instinct guides us. The words spread through the hall like a soft wind, gentle, yet carrying a weight none could ignore. One of the candidates stepped forward slightly, her voice courteous. Your Majesty, if instinct guides you, perhaps the moon has revealed what you seek. Her tone held confidence, but it flickered faintly at the edges. Damien regarded her with polite respect, but something in his eyes made it clear that his focus remained elsewhere. The officer stepped forward again, more cautiously this time. Your Majesty, do you require assistance in identifying the bond? Damien's expression remained composed, though a subtle firmness entered his voice. Assistance is not required. He paused for a moment, letting the words settle. Then his attention drifted, inevitably, gently, back toward Lila. She felt the connection like a quiet touch against the air. Her eyes lifted instinctively, only to meet his gaze across the distance. It lasted only a moment, but the hall seemed to still again, acknowledging something it did not yet understand. Damien drew a slow breath, steady and deliberate. Then he addressed the hall. The bond one seek is one that resonates without force, he said. One that answers with clarity when the moment is honest. Those closest to Lila shifted subtly, their curiosity sharpening. She felt the attention growing around her like pressure, but she kept her posture small and composed, unwilling to disrupt the fragile balance of the ceremony. The moonlight deepened, casting a silver halo along the platform as Damien straightened slightly, his presence radiating calm authority. "Before I finalize my choice," he said softly, "I will speak with her once more." A collective breath swept through the hall as Damien stepped down from the dais again, confident and unhurried, moving with a purpose that left no doubt whom he met. And as he walked toward Lila beneath the rising glow of the moon, the entire Silverfang court watched, suspended between awe and disbelief, waiting to witness what destiny would reveal next. The marble floor glowed softly beneath the rising moon as Damien crossed the hall once more, each step quiet enough to feel intentional rather than ceremonial. The Silverfang court stood in absolute silence, suspended between curiosity and disbelief as their king approached the Omega, who should never have been part of this night at all. Lila's breath trembled gently in her chest. She kept her hands folded before her, grounding herself in the small, simple gesture while the warmth beneath her collarbone pulsed in a steady rhythm that matched something deep and unseen. When Damien stopped before her, he did so with the composed calm of someone who understood the weight of every watching eye, yet refused to let it dictate his next move. His voice, low and steady, reached her without effort. "Lila Rowan," he said, giving her name the same care one might give a truth that had waited too long to be spoken. "I need you to answer something honestly. Not for the court. For us." Her heart tightened, not from fear, but from the unexpected gentleness in his tone. "Yes, Your Majesty," she replied softly. "What do you need to know?" Damien studied her quietly, as if searching for the right phrasing. "When we touched," he said, "and again when I asked you to step forward, did you feel it too? That pull, that resonance?" Lila's breath caught, the warmth beneath her collarbone responding with a quiet ache of recognition. She lowered her eyes briefly before lifting them again, her voice a gentle whisper. "I did." The simple admission settled between them with surprising clarity. Nothing dramatic, nothing overwhelming. Just truth. Damien exhaled slowly, the kind of breath that came from finally acknowledging something one had sensed long before naming it. The ceremonial officer shifted anxiously beside the platform, clearly uncertain how to proceed. "Your Majesty, the moon is nearing its final mark. The ritual will demand a decision soon." Damien acknowledged him with a slight nod, then returned his full attention to Lila. "If I ask you something," he said gently, "I need you to answer without fear of consequence. Can you do that?" Lila nodded, her hands steady despite the tremor in her chest. "I can try." "Good," Damien said softly, "because what I feel is not something I can dismiss. And I need to know if this bond, whatever it is something you would allow me to explore." Lila's breath fluttered. She had never imagined being asked such a question by anyone, let alone the Alpha King. She searched herself, seeking honesty rather than expectation. "I do not understand what it means," she admitted quietly, "but I am not afraid of it." A warmth flickered in Damien's expression, subtle yet unmistakable, relief mixed with gratitude. "Then I ask only one thing of you," he said. "Walk with me, not as part of the ritual, not as a candidate. Just walk with me for a moment." The hall stirred, whispers blooming along the edges like ripples across water. An Omega walking beside the king during the mating ritual defied every rule carved into the history of their world. Yet Damien extended his hand, not commanding, not assuming, simply offering. And Lila, drawn by the same quiet resonance she still did not understand, placed her hand in his with a steadying breath. The moment their palms met, that soft warmth flared again, gentle and certain, as if responding to a truth long overdue. Damien stepped back slightly, giving her space to choose, but when she took the first step beside him, the entire hall seemed to exhale. The musicians faltered. The candidates watched with stunned disbelief. The moonlight deepened, casting a pale glow around them as they began to walk, side by side, toward the platform that had never been meant for someone like her. And yet somehow, tonight, destiny made room for her there. The moonlight spilled across the platform in a widening pool of silver as Damien and Lila approached, walking side by side in a way no tradition had prepared the court to witness. Every step seemed to echo with a quiet significance, not loud or dramatic, but steady, like a realization unfolding in real time. Lila felt the warmth beneath her collarbone grow stronger with each pace, a gentle pulse responding to something she still could not describe in words. She kept her posture small and respectful, aware of hundreds of eyes tracking her movement, yet she did not retreat. Beside her, Damien's presence felt calm, grounded, and strangely reassuring. He did not rush her. He did not pull her forward. He simply walked at her pace, matching her step for step, as if they had been doing this for far longer than a single evening. When they reached the base of the platform, Damien turned to her with a quiet sincerity that softened the edges of his otherwise controlled expression. "Lila," he said, his voice steady enough to settle the hall. "I need to ask you one final question before I make my choice." Lila drew a gentle breath, nodding. "I will answer honestly, Your Majesty." His gaze held hers, warm and searching. "If this bond continues to grow," he said, softly, "and if it becomes what I believe it may become, would you allow yourself to explore it with me? Not as a servant, not as an obligation, but as someone whose presence steadies mine." The hall fell into a deeper silence than before. Even the torches seemed to soften their crackle. Lila felt her heartbeat rise in her throat, not with fear, but with the weight of being seen, truly seen, in a way she had never expected. "I do not know where it leads," she admitted gently, her voice steady, "but I am willing to take a step toward it." Damien exhaled in a way that revealed more relief than he intended to show. He offered his hand again, open and patient. Lila placed her hand in his once more, feeling that same quiet resonance bloom between them, warm and unmistakable. Together, they stepped onto the platform. Gasps rippled through the hall, soft but undeniable, as the entire Silverfawn court watched an Omega ascend the dais beside the Alpha King. Damien released her hand only when she reached the top, allowing her the space to choose her place. She stood slightly behind him at first, uncertain of where she belonged, until he angled his stance gently, just enough to create room at his side. A silent invitation. Lila stepped into the space he offered. The ceremonial officer stared in stunned disbelief before remembering his duty and lifting the ritual scroll with trembling hands. "Your Majesty," he said, trying to steady his voice, "the moon stands at its peak. You may declare your choice." The crystal in Damien's hand glowed softly as the moonlight caught its edges. He raised it high enough for all to see before speaking in a calm, resonant tone that carried through every corner of the hall. "Tonight," he said, "I choose according to instinct and truth." His gaze swept the crowd, then returned to Lila with unmistakable clarity. "I will not choose a mate based on expectation. I will choose the path that answers the bond one have felt." A wave of murmurs rippled through the court, but no one dared interrupt. Damien lowered the crystal slowly, his voice quiet but certain. "The bond begins here," he said, turning slightly toward Lila. "With the one who steadied me when she did not mean to. With the one whose presence resonates with mine without force." Lila's breath caught, as the realization settled over the hall like a soft, undeniable tide. Damien faced the assembly fully, his voice firm. "The ritual is complete. My choice is made." And though he had not yet spoken her title, the entire court understood the truth. Destiny had shifted, and an Omega had been chosen by the Alpha King himself.